Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. CWS is about having conversations with people about their journey and how they're using their gifts and talents to help others. I believe that it is very important that we share our stories because to me, we're never more connected as human beings when we share our stories, when we talk about our successes, but also mention our challenges, how often we got up when we fell. And why I'm always encouraging people to share their stories is because imagine a young person or someone listening to you and being inspired or encouraged to step beyond their limitations, beyond their challenges, and one day becoming someone that makes a magnificent contribution to society. Someone who might be a head of state or an oncologist or someone who discovers a vaccine that saves millions of lives. I also believe that it is very important that we pursue success, not so that we can glorify these successes, but I believe because our successes are beacons of light that reminds us or reminds others that they too can shine. And so it is important that when we receive an idea, to focus on these ideas and commit to them. Tonight we have a gem of our soil, the Honorable Justice Roxane George. And when I return, I will introduce her to you. We'll take a short break. We are back. Those who are joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Lady next to me is the Honorable Madam Justice Roxane George. Madam George, good evening and welcome to CWS.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much.
It is indeed an honor to have you as a guest on CWS. You were born and raised in Guyana.
Mm-hmm. And still living there.
And still living there.
Happily so.
Can you give us a glimpse into your life growing up in Guyana at the age of 9 and 15 and who you became at 21?
Sometimes I don't remember what happened yesterday. You're taking me a little while back, but at age 9 I would have been preparing for Common Entrance as we knew it then. Mm-hmm. It's now the National Grade 6 assessment. I guess I would have been working hard. I passed for the Bishop's High School, school I love. I was into piano. I played piano. I was going to piano lessons. I didn't do dance. I definitely was not a dance material. At 15, I'd have been in third, fourth form, preparing for what we now call CSEC, Caribbean Secondary Examinations. It was then called just CXC. I was an art student, had no interest in sciences. I enjoyed my educational experience at the Bishop's High School, and That's what I recall at ages 9 and 15.
What do you think your parents would say about you if they were asked to describe you?
Hmm. Basically very quiet, um, very studious, stubborn, fun loving when I want to be fun loving. I'm a family person, so yeah.
Do you remember any words of wisdom from either parent that still resonate with you today?
Oh yes. My parents. I have three siblings, two brothers and a sister, and they've always exhorted that we be respectful of others, that we be humble, to be giving and sharing of in personality, and to just be very amiable. Not to be brash and pretentious. My mother, in particular, would say, "Don't be a fop." They were very, just brought us up to be very, very respectful of others and of ourselves. Yes.
What are your fondest memories of them?
Well, for those who don't know, my father was a judge of the High Court, of the Supreme Court of Guyana, and of the Court of Appeal. He retired as Chancellor of the Judiciary and went on to serve in a couple other jurisdictions, the Bahamas and Belize. After his retirement, my mother was a trained medical social worker, but became a homemaker, as we call them now. But my fondest memories are being taken to the creeks. We used to go to the creeks with other family friends, especially during the school holidays, and have a lot of fun at the creeks. Big picnics, large picnics, I remember those. And kite flying,
And
kite flying at Easter. Yeah.
you mentioned your dad having been a judge. Um, you are now a judge. While growing up, do you think that him being a judge might have influenced you in that direction in any way?
Maybe subconsciously, I don't really know. I know my father and lots of other family members who were educators, and lots of my teachers maybe even felt that I was smart enough to do science. But I honestly feel persons are wired differently, and I was not wired for science. I was an art student, and I guess reasonably good at that, and I was quite happy to be an art student. When it came to choosing a career, I was kind of conflicted between doing mass communications or law. And my father did say, well, lean to something in case you need to put up a shingle and look after yourself, you should do that. But I think I just naturally gravitated to it. There wasn't any pressure whatsoever from my parents to study law. I just fell into it and I've enjoyed it all the way through.
Outside your parents, who would you say has had the greatest influence on you?
Going to Bishop's High School has meant that there were lots of women in the main who came to the school to address us on various issues. I remember Shirley Field Ridley, in particular. I remember Mrs. Viola Burnham coming to speak to us as students. And later on, after I came back, when I finished my studies and I returned to Guyana, women such as Magda Pollard, Justice Desiree Bernard, recently retired from the Caribbean Court of Justice, Dr. Janice Jackson, psychologist, and Karen D'Souza. There were a number of women. Hazel Halley Burnett, then head of the Women's Affairs Bureau within the Ministry of Human Services. They were women who, some or the other, I met them and we just clicked, so to speak. And they have been my mentors and, I won't say confidants, but advisors, and really made me understand and appreciate what it is to be a woman, women's rights issues, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
How do you, in reflection, um, how do you see that, see these women, powerful women in their own rights, in their own fields, taking you under their wing, so to speak, and mentoring you, advising you? How important is that for a young woman in any career?
Oh, it's extremely important because it says to you, you have a living example of what you can achieve. You have a living example of information. I think in Guyana and in some parts of the Caribbean region, but I can speak specifically for Guyana, we tend to have an institutional memory gap. And it is important that information and legacy is passed on from one generation to the next. We don't have much writings, I know. It tends to be oral. I know many say I should write a book. I don't know when I will get around to doing that. But that tradition of passing on the message is so important. And I try with the little that I can achieve to pass on the message that has been handed to me, to say to young people, and particularly young women, be the best that you can be. And more importantly, respect yourself and respect others.
Do you remember any? I know you believe in teaching and passing on knowledge and information to younger people, but do you remember any teaching moment that you've experienced with one of these women that you've mentioned that have stuck with you?
There's so many. There are so many over the years. I was fortunate, in particular, Magda Pollard, who I can say is a mentor, over the years has always encouraged me so much to, for instance, even to study for my master's. She's one of those, apart from my parents in the background, who said to me, Roxane, when are you going to get it done? You simply have to. And then she was on my, after I did my master's, she says, when are you going to go for your doctorate? So they're always behind you, giving you that little extra push. And sometimes you need that little push. And I try with interactions with students, mainly from the Bishop's High School, sixth form, who do law. Some students from University of Guyana do come to see me. I try my best to give them that advice and information to say to them, push the envelope. Don't be satisfied with mediocrity. That's something that Justice Bernard always says. Strive for excellence. And be committed to what you have to do. Set yourself high ideals.
I want to stick around a little bit where Bishop's High School is concerned. Not only because we are both students of Bishop's High School, former students. And we just had a reunion where people of all ages converged and shared memories and so on and so forth. But you mentioned some women who have attended Bishop's High School. And in the context of legacy, of passing on, how important is that for an alumni association? But let me frame it another way. How important is it to have mentors who have attended the same institution that you have?
Because they pass on the values of the institution. I think we've fallen away a bit on that at home right now, but we're trying to revive it. For instance, Dr. Jackson, along with Mr. Vidyartha Kasoon, and I and others, we had a mentoring program for the sixth formers, where it was a 6-week program, and we spoke about a wide range of issues, from domestic violence to music, to what are your views on this, that, the next, and the other. And to try to also get across to them the values of being a Bishop student, the values of being a leader. Not a leader in a brash way, but somebody, and we always go back to the word respect.
Yeah.
Somebody who can be respected and must command respect in whatever sphere of endeavor. We also have the mentoring program for the younger students, where Bishop students, former Bishop students, mentor students in the junior part of the school from first to third form. I've had 2 mentees. One is just completed university, the other one is halfway through there. And it gives you some sense of satisfaction to be able to impart some knowledge. It's not even education type knowledge in a formal sense, but just a voice to listen to and also to interact with. And we have found it has been very, very beneficial. There are a number of the students, especially from the sixth form program, who've gone on to do law. And I interact with them on to now. Some of them are already lawyers. So it's very, very gratifying to be able to contribute in that small way And we would really like to be able to recommence the sixth form program in particular, because those are the young people, the leaders of tomorrow. Those are the people who we have to pass that torch, the baton to carry us on. And that is what the bishop's legacy is all about.
You know, you mentioned two people who I was fortunate to be alive while they were in office. Um, Shirley Field Ridley and Viola Barnum. Can you put, I know this might be unfair to ask you, but for those young people who don't know them or familiar with their work, and for the international audience who's listening, can you put them in context as to why they coming to the school and speaking to you was so important?
Well, they came to speak. They usually used to come for International Women's Day celebrations in March. At that time, my recollection is that we did not commemorate or recognize International Day Against Violence Against Women, which is November the 25th. But every International Women's Day, some leading woman in the country would come to the school to speak with us. And it always struck me that here were women who had achieved, who were very easy they were approachable, who were willing to come and speak to us as children, and who spoke very passionately about women's rights and women's issues and what it was and is to be a respectable and respected woman who must contribute and contribute meaningfully and not to be in a box, so to speak, in terms of traditional roles for women and girls. They said to us, go out and be the best that you can be and be leaders. And I think that I remember those two women in particular, but there would be many others who would have come. And our teachers also exhorted us in that regard. So it's something that it just became almost like second nature. It's a subconscious issue. Yeah.
Well, when we go back to bishops, which has historically prepared young people, especially young girls, for leadership, and as you said just now, not to remain in a box or to put themselves in a box. Looking back and reflecting on your accomplishments, what are your thoughts on that tradition?
Well, it's an excellent tradition, and that we have to continue it to try to impart to the young people, not only at the Bishop's High School, in whichever educational institution or organization, because you have a lot of youth clubs and groups, to emphasize to them that proper behavior is important, decorum is important. I mean, people look at Bishop's children and other children, say from Queen's College, Saints, Roses, and say, but how do they dress like that? It's because you instill certain values. Not because you want to be annoying, but because at the end of the day, when they step out of the school environment into the world of work, into that wider community, the world at large, how they carry themselves, how they speak, will set them above the rest. And that is what we like to say to the children. Not everybody will be a high flyer, but at least you must carry yourself properly.
On the subject of leadership, it's hard, it's difficult not to think of leadership when you mention those women. Mm-hmm. When did you first appreciate leadership?
I think for my parents in some respects, because apart from what I had mentioned earlier, they always said, don't just be a follower. Don't just follow the crowd. Think. My father's pet phrase always was, where are your brains? And you had to point and show him. Because he expected that you must think. Think before you leap. Think before you speak. Think before you act. To me, it's basic. And so To me, those qualities were there in the home. And then when you get to school like Bishop's High School, which further nurtures that, I guess I got a double blessing.
What is your message to women and young girls on the importance of leadership and preparing to be leaders?
Well, the message. I think what I've been saying all along, it's a question of how you carry yourself. It's a question of being committed to whatever endeavor you're pursuing. Whether you want to get into profession of law, which is extremely demanding, whether you want to get into all these science and technology fields, which we're now pushing. I know there's a whole movement on the issue of IT and girls. To be respectful of yourself and others to the extent that you must appreciate that you're not to be a punching bag, whether it is a psychological punching bag or a physical punching bag. Issues of violence against women are of great concern to me. And I like to emphasize to young women that they must not accept any form of violence to their person, whether it's physical, psychological, emotional, economic. You have a brain in your head, and once you, with God's grace, have the opportunity and the ability to work and to excel, go for it.
What do you think was the genesis of your passion for women's issues and women's rights?
It started off at school, in high school in particular. As I said, every International Women's Day, someone would come along to a leading woman figure in the community would come to speak to us. I don't know at that age that I thought of it as women's rights issues. That was not in my conscience, but it obviously must have seeped in. And as I said, when I returned to Guyana, I remember going to a women's conference at the Tower Hotel and just sitting there and listening and absorbing all the various bits and pieces of information. And I just got involved naturally, myself and Rose Benjamin Noble and Rosemary Cadogan. We just got involved, and it was just extremely gratifying. We joined the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers. At that time, Justice Bernard was still the president, yes, if my memory serves me correctly. And she took us under her wing, and we did a lot of outreach work on women's rights issues. We started to co-edit the Law New booklet series. We had a radio program. It was recorded at first, and then we went live. We did live programs. And then you started to fully appreciate what it is to be a citizen, to be a person, to command respect, to know your rights, to know your responsibilities. And so it has been a journey and a process over the years, but it started way back in high school.
Have you had any feedback from lay persons? I know this was a group of lawyers and organizations, attorneys, but have you had any positive feedback from lay persons that have been affected by this movement?
Oh yes, our outreach work we still do. I mean, I no longer go out and do community work. And we are encouraging a number of younger women lawyers to come on board, and quite a few of them have been very, very responsive. We're very gratified at their response. But going out into the communities and speaking to people, sometimes we will say, okay, we will schedule a 1-hour visit. Invariably, those outreach programs then, and I understand they still take about 3 hours. Once you start, the kind of information, the exchanges between whoever is in attendance with the lawyers and other facilitators, because sometimes we take along social workers with us, it's just tremendous. The recent outreach they had was in Kurukuru, just at the beginning of the Suze Dyke Linden Highway area. And I am told, and like a lawyer say and verily believe, that there were about 100 persons in attendance over the course of the day. And they shared out the Law New booklets. They interacted with the persons. They would ask legal questions. The association members still go to do prisons visits at the women's prisons. Again, the women in the prisons, yes, they're incarcerated for whatever they would have done, but they have family issues, property issues, all kinds of matters that they need attention. And so they would give advice. I have visited the prisons on 2 occasions when I was a prosecutor, along with the Guyana, under the aegis of the Guyana Association of Women Lawyers. But the feedback has always been positive, very, very positive. And what we have found also is that there's a hunger for knowledge. People want to have that information. They want to participate. They want to engage. They want to be consulted, and consulted meaningfully, so that they can contribute to the development of their communities and themselves.
I suppose that some of these outreach have not been without their challenges.
Yes, the main challenge is finance. And Guyana, although small, is still large. The terrain that we have to cover, the distances that we have to cover. We have not done as much work in the interior locations, though our members have gone to Lethem, they have gone to Madhya. I know members went onto the Essequibo Coast a few months ago, within the past year. But it takes financing. We do get some financing, mainly from international financial institutions such as the Canadian Government's Development Agency, USAID, the British funding agency, I think it's called DFID. They all provide funds. Sometimes the EU, European Union Commission, they provide funding. Not only to Guyana Association of Women Lawyers, a number of other organizations that do this kind of outreach work. But of course, ours is focused on the legal aspect.
Did you find, I know you, Rose, and the 2 Roses grew up together, went to school together and so on, and you guys shared a bond since then. But did you find some of these efforts brought you closer and sort of encouraged you to continue?
Oh, yes. And when it comes to Rose Benjamin Noble, she being a broadcaster, really facilitated us using that media, the media of radio, to educate persons about their rights. So we had, as I said, a Law News series, which we used to tape, and we brought on both women and male lawyers also used to participate in that program. And then, as I said, we went live under the guidance of Rose Benjamin. But yes, it brought us together as friends. We had a lot of fun times doing a lot of fun things in various communities. I mean, and you did it, it inspired us. Volunteerism is so important. Yeah. And I still tell the younger lawyers, when you go out there and you volunteer in a community, you do not know what benefit you will get later on. It may be a person who becomes your client. It may be a person who becomes your friend. It may be a person who will help you in some way. I remember myself and another friend, Sandra Bart, another lawyer who's at CARICOM now, going to do an outreach program. Really? Yes. Going to do a program in Craig Village on the East Bank. And our reward, they baked us a lovely cake. And that was unique in the sense that it was a craft class. And the leader of the group asked us to go up and talk about women's rights issues while they knitted, crocheted, did whatever craft work they were doing. And so we got the cake and 2 lovely pincushions. But it was gratifying. We were rewarded. We felt special. Our 3 hours of effort, of engagement, of interaction, of understanding grassroots women, their needs, their concerns, and how important, and imparting to them how important their work was in community building, in their families, for their families, and so on. So we really, really enjoyed it. I remember that outing in particular. It's very, very enjoyable.